Greetings, beloved Star Child Rising. You are in Christina's Corner, and I am Christina. Welcome back to the podcast. As I shared in my first episode, this podcast is all about love and healing, celebrating, inspiring, impactful, and innovative individuals who are using their gifts to uplift our world, to raise the collective frequency. Today, I am absolutely delighted and honored to welcome Dr. Ashley L. Bennett. Ashley is a true force in the education world with experience spanning admissions, college counseling, and school administration in both the secondary and post secondary schools levels, including service on now two nonprofit boards. You didn't think I knew that, did you, Ashley? I did my homework. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Known for her exceptional problem solving skills, her ability to build genuine relationships with students, families, colleagues, you name it, and the invaluable contributions she makes to every team that she's a part of. How do I know? Because I served with her. Ashley is also a highly sought after DEI facilitator and educator. DEI, if you've never heard that term, stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'll put Ashley's contact information in the video description, so don't worry. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Christine. I'm excited to be here.
So excited to have you. I'm so excited to see you.
I know it's been way too long.
I know. Ashley, in all of my podcasts, I have 6 questions. So I'm gonna start with the first one. And the first one is let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about your upbringing and your journey into education. What sparked your position for this field? And when did you realize that it was your true calling?
Hmm. That's a loaded question. Let's see. So it all started in the fourth largest city in the nation. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I'm a very proud Houstonian. Texas, it's a lot going on there, but I'm very proud of my home. I'm the eldest of five. So my mother, may she rest, she wasn't college educated. She, graduated high school and she met my father shortly thereafter. And he also didn't graduate college, but graduated high school, started working, started a family really early. My dad was 19 and my mom was 20 when they had me. So I'm the eldest. I was a trial and error baby. They did I would say they did the best they could, but there were a lot of challenges, right? Because imagine being raised by a 19 and 20-year-old. So, yeah, there were a lot of challenges that came with that. And so I found myself really interested in getting away pretty early. Like I knew that college would be my way to be successful, right? And even though I am a college counselor by trade, I do not believe that college is the only path to success. I truly don't. But I knew for me, I didn't have the other talents that would be marketable at that time. Like I'm not really a creative, not artsy. I can't, I was just thinking of all the things that I saw people doing who were successful. And I knew those things didn't necessarily fit for me, but I was good at school. So I knew college would be the way that I could change the trajectory of my life. And my parents, they went on together to have 4 children together. And so I'm the eldest of five, but I also am the mother of one of my siblings. So my youngest sibling became my daughter when my mother passed away. And that's a story for another day, but I just wanted to share that it's a winding road, right? How I got here. So grew up in Houston. I attended the first high school for Black folks in the city. It was at the time called Old Colored High, if you can believe that.
Oh,
Yeah, and it went on to be renamed Booker T. Washington High School. Still very much active, still very proud of my alma mater. So I attended Booker T. Washington High School, and at the time, there was a recruiter named Sydney Jones from the University of Oklahoma. Her son attended Booker T. Washington, so she always had an extra interest in us as students, and she was working for the engineering program at OU. She led what was called at the time the Minorities in Engineering program, and I was in a magnet engineering school on the campus of Booker T. Washington. And so Miss Sydney Jones, she came, she recruited, she offered scholarships and all the wonderful things. So I ended up matriculating to the University of Oklahoma. And I already had an interest in OU because my cousin attended. And so that was like the one big college that I knew of outside of Texas. And again, I wanted to get away. So I applied for three colleges, two in Texas and the University of Oklahoma. And I'm just crossing my fingers, like, come on, Lord. And so I was accepted to all three. And I was concerned that meant I would have to choose one of the Texas ones because they were less expensive. But again, with Miss Jones' scholarship, it kind of offset that cost. So I was able to matriculate to OU. And at the time, I was majoring in industrial engineering because remember, I was in an engineering program. Also, when you think about Black families back then, they're thinking doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? The things that could really help you become successful. Your brother's a lawyer. So I'm sure
Mhm.
there were plenty of speeches like that in your house. And so I felt like I wanted to make a good living. I was pretty good at school, so let's be an engineering major. I struggled. I really struggled. Um, I would say one, because I was at a big state institution. So a lot of those really difficult classes were in that auditorium size classroom, right? So I'm sitting
Right.
in class learning complex concepts with 500 of my closest friends. And then I go on to an internship at Burlington Northern Santa Fe. It was an engineering internship. And this is where I saw for the first time what I would be doing in practice, not just in the classroom. And that's when I knew engineering wasn't for me. And I was so scared because it was the summer before my senior year when I had this revelation. I get back to campus, I talk to my academic advisor, and I say, listen, I'm a little panicked. I don't want to do this anymore. And she asks, well, what classes bring you joy? What do you see yourself doing? What are you really excited about? And at the time, I was minoring in African and African American studies. And I love those classes because growing up in Texas, we learned Texas history. We didn't learn Black history. And so
Mhm.
I was so excited in undergrad to dig in deeper. And so those classes I always approached with excitement and gusto and flair. And then I thought about it like, well, then that should be my major when I'm talking to the advisor. But then at the same time, I also said, but how will I make money doing that? Right? How will I make a living? And so she told me something that I tell students to this day. The money will come later. You work on what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and then all of these opportunities, they'll avail themselves to you. And you are applying for jobs or you're thinking about jobs that don't even exist yet. So when you get trapped in the finite idea of this is what I need to be successful, you're closing yourself off to a lot of opportunities. So I took her advice. I changed my major. And then I knew that grad school was inevitable because I was still figuring a lot out. I went to grad school at the University of Central Oklahoma in Edmond, which is a suburb of Oklahoma City. I attended OCU to obtain my master's in education, adult education, with an emphasis in training. And then I worked for a while as a recruiter, and I did all kinds of admissions work, first as a student, then as a full-time professional. But if you know anything about college admissions or admission in general, because I see my high school colleagues going through the same thing, there's a ton of travel. And at that time in my life, I loved it. I'm young, I'm traveling on someone else's dime, I'm getting to see all parts of the country and the world. But then I got to a place where I was like, okay, I've been living out of these suitcases, eating all this food on the road. Like I'm ready to really settle down a bit. So talked to a mentor and he asked me if I thought about college counseling in high school. And I'm like, high school? I was used to the college student, the college crowd, and that was just kind of my comfort zone. But as I thought about it more, I'm thinking, okay, well, the benefit of high school that I wasn't thinking about before in college admission, once you help the students through the admission process, they're gone, right? They're off in the college doing their thing. But in high school, you get to really cultivate relationships with students over time. So typically, on average, I'm working with the student for at least a year and a half because we start working with them halfway through their junior year. But for some students, I get to know them all 4 years because I'm advising them or I'm working with them on clubs or things like that. So high school was a place I found that I could really dig deeply and develop relationships. So I've been at my current high school. This is the fourth year, and this is my third college counseling job in a high school setting. So before Emma Willard School, I was at KIPP Sunnyside High School in Houston as director of college counseling. And before that, I was at St. Agnes Academy, which is a Catholic girls' day school in Houston.
Wow. Isn't it amazing how the universe, when you reflect back on your history and the journey that you took to get to where you are now, things kind of fall in place and make sense as to why you went through what you went through to be able to contribute in the way that you're contributing now. And that's why kids connect to you because they know you know what you're talking about from experience.
And I tell
And
them all the time, it's where you finish. Like we all had different starting points. We all had winding roads, but where you end up, where you finish, that tells your story. And the winding road contributes to the story.
right, right, right. And there's a reason behind it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Number two, Ashley, you and we share a deep understanding of the vital role that DEIJB plays in education. DEIJB, diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. And we've both been doing this work for a long time. However, I'll say that the murder of George Floyd in 2020 brought a new level of scrutiny to independent schools, particularly PWI. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color alumni expressed through the Black at Instagram movement. Remember those?
I do.
That movement? They expressed their hurt, their disappointment, and quite frankly, their anger at the school's responses to the murder of George Floyd. Basically, they intentionally wanted to empathize with Black students by saying, we love you, we care for you, we support you, as we always have. And alums were like, what? How dare you? It was triggering. It
Yeah.
was triggering not just for them, it was triggering for historically marginalized communities all over. And even there were a bunch of white alums who were like, you know what? You did not prepare us for the critical conversations and the relationship building skills necessary to be able to navigate college and beyond. And for that, they were also incensed.
Mhm.
Can you share how this period impacted your work and what key lessons did you learn from it?
Hmm. I would say the murder of George Floyd changed my life. And I'm not being hyperbolic. It changed the way I viewed allyship. It changed the way I viewed advocacy, supporting students, standing up for myself, and all of those things because I think George Floyd woke a sleeping giant, right? So on both sides, folks who really were just mortified by the brutality of his murder and the indifference of Derek Chauvin, but also folks on that other side who really didn't believe his life was valuable and believe what happened to him was just, right? And so I've made a few observations over the years about this because, like you mentioned before, several independent schools had to reckon with their past and present in a lot of cases, right? Um, but I guess the critical part of me is like, what took you so long,
Mhm.
right? Because I'm going back to Rodney King. That was recorded, televised on the national stage. They still got off, right? And so for me, I think the major difference with George Floyd, and I'm not a social scientist, but I think the major difference is it was during COVID and we didn't have that external noise and those distractions of life and running around, getting the kids to school, getting yourself to work, meal
Mhm.
prep, like all the things that we have to do to just function as adults who are in charge of families. All of that was quieted because we were home. Our children were learning virtually. We were working virtually, right? And so we had to sit and watch 9 minutes and 29 seconds of that man losing his life. We had to watch it. There wasn't the regular hullabaloo of life in the way. And so I think that coupled with we were already in a racial reckoning period in our country, I think those two things combined really energized a new base of people. And again, the critical part of me is like, you shouldn't have had to see 9 minutes and 29 seconds to recognize what's been happening in this country, but I'm glad you're here. Right. And so, saying all that to say, I, hmm, I would say a few things. Like, I normally avoid Black trauma for my own self-care and mental health and preservation, but I made myself watch it, right? And it was heartbreaking for all of the reasons. But this man is calling out for help. He is saying he can't breathe. He is calling for his deceased mother. And nobody got that man's knee off his neck. Nobody around. And here's the thing, I can't say with full certainty that I would have jumped in that moment because I know how police treat Black folks. So I have a family to get home to. I want, all of that. So I'm not judging the folks who were standing by. I'm judging the fellow officer who knew what was happening right in front of him. So all of that to say, I asked a question on Facebook not too long ago, like what radicalized you? There are so many moments in my life that radicalized me, but the death of George Floyd sent me somewhere else as it relates to just how I move and take up space and, the things that I allow myself to share at work and all of those pieces. I'm not of the mind that I have to show up like, excuse me, I'm not of the mind that I have to show up and give work like all of me, right? My friends are going to get some of me that work doesn't get. My family is going to get another part of me, right? So I don't have to be all of Ashley Bennett at work, but I'm also not going to jump through the code switching hoops anymore. I'm not going to get on this hamster wheel to prove my value anymore because it's all for nothing. It's
Mhm.
all for nothing. If they have decided that they don't like me because I am me, I am not about to convince them otherwise. And so I would say George Floyd really, really contributed to that. And then in the academic space, I would say schools, yes, I love that they were called out because our kids have been saying this for years, decades, right? And it falls on deaf ears or it falls on administrative ears who say, oh, okay, we're going to change. We'll hire someone or we'll throw some money at the problem. But they're talking about change on a local level, not an institutional level. Because the institutional level, that's where it gets tricky. That's where you're talking about donors. That's where you're talking about really upsetting some people. And so that part, we'll kind of leave that over there as long as we can. But what we will do is start affinity groups. What we will do is hire a DEI director. What we will do is throw a little extra money into the scholarship or the recruitment of kids of color, right? So we'll put these bandages on it. But when you get here, we're still us. So you got to figure out how to navigate that. So I would say, I don't know any school that does it perfectly. None. I don't know of any business that does it perfectly. Well, maybe Ben and Jerry's, but I would say in
Cos-
general, right, Costco. But yeah, I would say most institutions that I'm familiar with, they really had to sit, listen, unpack with folks of color, alum, and employees alike. I really love when alum pipe up because employees are vulnerable, right? Folks need to provide for their families, keep their jobs. But alum, they have a huge voice in these conversations. And so I do love when they take charge and speak up on those issues. So yeah, I mean, there's no way that I'm in New York had George Floyd not been murdered. No way. because again, I just started thinking about my life differently. I started thinking about my career differently. I was in a place where, while I wasn't too involved in like a lot of things outside of my job, I was the ask a black woman. And so it just the emotional labor of all that. After his passing, I'm like, what am I doing any of this for? So yeah, that was a very long-winded way of saying he changed my life. I am still grieving his loss. I'm grieving his daughter not being raised with a father. Like those things will stay. But I really believe that man's life and death started a revolution in a new generation of folks.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I'm right with you. And thinking back to that time, it was right after that where when we met, we were pretty much at the same place. I was recentering the equity work and met you. It was after the murder of George Floyd, and we kind of were processing all of that together. There were many times where I was in your office, you were in my office.
Yeah.
There were many times, but that was a huge turning point for a lot of people in this country, all over the world, actually. Um, so thank you for sharing. Okay, number three. We have had actually many candid conversations about the challenges of this work.
Mm.
We often encouraged each other to pick our battle, echoing Audre Lorde's powerful words, quote, caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. You touched upon this earlier. What does this quote mean to you personally? And how do you, as a Black woman, mother, wife, sister, friend, colleague, and leader, prioritize self-care?
Honey, as Shonda Rhimes said in her book, The Year of Yes, no is a complete sentence.
Mm, mm,
If I don't have space for it, time for it, or interest in it, I'm not doing it. And I think that's a new thing for me, right? Like in the last 5 years or so, I finally had the confidence and let go of that imposter syndrome and told myself, look, I deserve to be here. I don't have to consistently prove that I deserve to be here. And so for me now, do I take on extra projects at work and in life? Absolutely. But it's things that add value to me and vice versa, things I know I can contribute to, but I'm not just doing the thing to do it. If I don't want to go out for cocktails with my girls, I'm gonna say, girl, I'm tired. I got you next time. If
mm.
it's drama going on in my family, I am going to excuse myself. Man, I just don't have the bandwidth. Um, Now I will say I don't manage everything perfectly, right? Like there's a lot of mom guilt in there. There's a lot of time where I'm thinking, oh, I should have, gone out on a date with my husband, like all the things, but it is well with my soul. I know that I'm showing up every day, doing my best, and the people who love me are loved by me fully and they know it. And so it's okay for me to say to someone, I'm tired or I can't do it, or just know it's okay. And rest is radical, it is revolutionary, and I gets plenty of it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Um, this next question, it has two parts to it. First, how is the work that you do healing? And second, given the concerning trend of attacks on DEI initiatives and funding that supports students with financial needs, what are your thoughts and what advice do you have for impacted students and the families?
Hmm. So I think the shorter answer is I believe the work that I do is healing because I show up for my kids no matter where they are in life, where they are in their academic journey, what kind of credentials they have. I'm just as proud. of my kid from matriculating to a community college or a junior college or a trade school. I'm just as proud of them as I am of the kid matriculating to the four-year university. So I think what they get from me is Dr. Bennett doesn't care where I go. She just wants me to go where I want to be. So I know folks in my profession, like, sometimes there's an extra little feather in your cap if you have X number of kids at the Ivies or the
Right.
selective colleges in your area. I do not care about that shit. Don't.
No, that has never bothered you. That never
Mm-mm.
bothered you at all.
I just want my kids
And
happy,
I, yeah.
whole, supported. I want them to feel like one of the challenges with working in independent schools, especially the selective, more rigorous name brand independent schools, there's a stigma attached to it. If you attend that school, you have to attend these type of colleges for it to all be worth it, right? And so I'm not saying that it's all peaches and cream because some of my kids really struggle with perception, really struggle with judgment and those things. But if I can get a kid to block out that noise and recognize this is my 4 years,
Mhm.
it has nothing to do with the rest of you. This is how I want to spend my 4 years. And I would say at least half of the time they would choose differently if they could block all of that out and just really think about what's the best match for me? Where can I be happy? Where can I gain the skills to be successful? Because Christine, I've worked with just as many folks who started at the community college level as I have folks who attended Ivy League colleges. We worked at the same level. We've made the same money. We had the same level of impact. So, and I joke with my kids, like if you find a 40-year-old bragging about their college, that's probably not a person you really want to hang out with. Like, right? Like I'm talking about my college when it's football season, like, rah, rah, sis, boom, bye. But I'm not wearing that on my chest. Like, this is something you need to know about me. You just need to know I'm a good person and I'm treating you well and I'm kind and thoughtful. That's what I want people to know about me. And so when I'm thinking about my kids who really struggle with that, it's more about perception than it is about them. So I just remind them, girl, and I'm saying girl because I'm at a girls' school now, but girl, you have enoughness in you. It doesn't matter where you take that. You bloom where you're planted. And once they can lock in on that, they have a really positive experience. Like I said, it doesn't always work because I'm also working against societal pressure, some cultural pressure, family pressure, and things like that. But I just want them to know wherever they go, there they are.
And you are healing. I remember you always having students behind closed doors because sometimes I had to stand in line to get into your office. Like, is you finished or is you through?
And most of the time they didn't have appointments. They just popped in. Yeah.
So part two of the question is, what is the advice you would give to parents
Mm.
in these attacks on DEI?
Yeah, so we've done a little bit of that because the community I serve, we just don't have a significant BIPOC population. We do have a significant LGBTQ population and an international population. So those conversations are a bit nuanced because I also think, and you are a DEI professional, when people think DEI, they think black, white, maybe brown, right?
Mhm.
They're not thinking about everything being DEI.
Mhm.
Me being able to sit closer to the front of the room because my vision is bad is
Right.
DEI,
Ability, right.
right? And
Mhm.
so I think I don't have to, it's just not a regular part of my practice as I'm used to. But in conversations with students initiated and we talk about those things, I'm always saying to them, you want to listen to what colleges say, but you definitely need to watch what they do. And that's something I got from my mentor, Dr. Cornish, president of Ithaca College. She said that to me recently, and I'm like, that's exactly it. Because, how many colleges have sent out these beautiful statements after, the affirmative action decision was returned? I love the statement, but let's look at your data. Let's see what not only your recruitment, but your retention of BIPOC students looks like. Let's talk about your access programming, right? And so If DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to a family, those are the conversations I'm having with them. And I'm going to say, visit that campus. You want to visit as an official visitor, right? So they can roll out the red carpet for you. But if you can, just go sit on a bench. Just observe the campus, not the kids they trot out in front of you, but who is actually milling about the campus. Do you see a Black boy who isn't wearing a football jersey? Do you see women leading and you see them in charge of clubs? Do you see faculty of color walking around campus, right? And so those things tell a story more than these beautiful statements written by a highly paid communications professional.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And I think back over the years, I find that nowadays, it used to be parents did all the research and asked all the questions, but
Mhm,
nowadays it's the students who are looking into these schools, looking at, as you say, the metrics and the data,
mhm,
um, being observant when they go to visit, checking out, their social media,
mhm,
and even looking at, what their board of directors are doing.
mhm.
What are they investing in? Where is the money going? So there's has been a lot of growth over the years as far as students taking the reins
Yeah.
uh, to do some research as well. So thank you for that.
Mhm,
Okay, two more questions. This
mhm,
one, I've always admired your insightful approach to college counseling. Um, you're not just a college counselor. I don't want to say just to make it sound like that, but you direct a department. And I remember when you chose Kendra James' memoir, Admissions. Remember that?
Ooh,
And you had your entire department read it as a professional development activity. And I felt that that was such a visionary move.
mm.
I often thought you should write a book on effectively running a college counseling department. Your wisdom, Ashley, your experience, your compassion, and your skill make you a natural, in my opinion, teacher's teacher. I know that you consult professionally, but have you ever considered becoming an author and sharing your expertise in this way through a book?
Yes, and I was traumatized is a dramatic word, but I was traumatized by my dissertation. So when I had to write my doctoral research, it just took so much out of me, Christine. But also academic writing is a different thing altogether.
Hmm?
It just, whew, it took a lot out of me. So that was the book that I was going to write this decade. Maybe the next decade is when I get to some real writing. And I would love to do it. It's just, going back to that question you asked about being a wife, mother, leader, et cetera, et cetera. Something has to give. I just don't have it. I don't have the time right now. But my son won't always be as dependent on me, right? He'll be 6 next month, and pretty soon he'll be off doing his own thing with his friends, not trying to hang out with mama. But while he is really into me, I want him to know I'm really into him.
And you got to feel called. You got to feel called um, to write. I mean, I never thought about writing a book, but I wrote three of them in like several
You
months.
did. You
I
cranked
mean,
him out.
I was in a zone, and I think that once you start and it hits you and you get in that zone, there's no stopping you. So, but I just think that something that can be documented that people can use as a manual with the way that you contribute to any organization, especially with college counseling. I think it would be very useful and very meaningful to
Hmm.
the educational community.
Thank you.
So something to think about
Yep,
anyway.
I am thinking.
Okay. Finally, Ashley, your support, if I haven't told you a million times, meant so much to me when both of my parents transitioned, the first year that we met, and they transitioned, if you remember, 3 months apart. For me, it highlighted the importance of a strong support system. Many of us, and we've talked about this, are raised to push through difficult situations alone. Um, but we evolve. As we evolve, we realize the value of a trusted circle.
Mhm.
I found that with
Mhm.
you, and I appreciate that. And you weren't hovering, but you let me know you were there.
Mhm.
And so, my question to you is, what has been a watershed moment in your life? And what advice do you have for navigating life's ups and downs while staying true to yourself?
December 8th, 2015 was the day my mother transitioned. And it's kind of crazy, Christine. Like I expected my mother to die before me, right? That's the natural order of things. And I was fortunate to have her through my childhood and much of my adulthood, but I was not ready. There, I wasn't ready. And my mother was a hard woman. We've talked about it before. She wasn't the milk and cookies after school mom. She was the get your life together, get out my face kind of mother. But we really developed a nice relationship in adulthood because the teenage years were really rocky, teenage hormones, black mama. So we had some rough years there, but I'm really grateful that and adulthood was a bit up and down too, but I'm grateful that we ended on a really good note. So I didn't have that guilt, but just the idea of at that point, I am now in charge of my siblings, for lack of a better word. Like things we would call mama for, they call me for, but I don't have mama to call, right? And so just being thrust into that role, it was a watershed moment for sure. And I counted all joy. Like I got to raise Asia for the rest of her childhood, and I got to experience motherhood in a way before I became a birth mother to my son. Um, so I got to, have those life experiences that were really fundamental in changing me and maturing me. So those were blessings. And I would say my siblings bonded a little bit closer as a result of her passing, which was also a blessing. But the rest of it was full. I mean, just the grief, but also having to mother and also having to be someone for my siblings to lean on. And also at the time, my grandmother was still living. So we were close and she was dealing with, grieving her child. And so just all of that. And then I looked up, Christine, and I had survived it. And so my motto now is my mama died. There's nothing else you can do to me. There's nothing you can say to me. There's no opportunity you could take away from me. I survived that. I'll survive any of the rest of the shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I resonate with that 100%. And, life is short, and plus, as we get older, you know, things take on different, priorities, different meanings. And so your advice,
Just in general?
mhm, to
Uh,
have to navigate life's ups and downs,
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. You've heard me say it a couple times, but count it all joy. Even in the difficulties of life, there's some joy in there. There's something good that you can learn from. There's something good that will happen as a result of. There's some good in all of it. And so I I'm not joyous all the time. I go through difficult periods just like anyone else, but my mind always goes to, but look at how blessed I am in these ways.
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
is what's so wonderful in my life. And, I have a great family. I have a job that helps me provide for that family. I have a great partner and a husband, all the things. So, yeah, life is going to beat me up from time to time, but my foundation is strong. So, count it all joy. And also,
Good.
don't sweat it. Don't sweat the small
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
Like people who, are easily embarrassed or, people who are more nervous about trying new things. Listen, I always ask myself, which might be toxic, but what's the worst that could happen?
Right.
What could happen if I do this or if I have that experience or if I say this thing? What's the worst that can happen? And I'm not here to say you won't get in trouble from time to time, but I walk away thinking, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. It's worth it than holding something in and letting it fester because that's when you can get physically ill.
Yeah.
And what you say is easier said than done. However, I do believe that whoever is watching, whoever feels called to watch this video, they're supposed to watch it. And when they're ready to hear the wisdom that you have shared with us this evening, then they're ready because
Yeah.
I'm going to share this video for folks to see. um, and I thank you, Dr. Ashley L. Bennett. I love you, my sister,
I
and I
love you
thank
back.
you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're getting ready to go to Ghana.
Hmm.
Um, I'm jealous. I wish I could go with you.
I'm ready.
Um, but I appreciate you and I honor you and love and light to the audience. And I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Ashley.
Thank you very much.